My name is Elizabeth Faboyede. I am a K through 4 academic dean. My journey to motherhood started in 2016. I was fortunate to get pregnant with my first daughter, Eliana.
My name is William Faboyede, and I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I'm a membership lead supervisor at AAA Northeast. I'm a husband to Elizabeth Faboyede, and I'm just blessed to have children and have a wife that support me, and we support each other. I have 2 children. Three. 2 living and then one that unfortunately passed away at 19 weeks.
The beginning of the pregnancy was normal, and then around 14 weeks I started having pain. I went to the ER a couple of times. They just kept sending me home, telling me to take Tylenol. They told me because I had other losses that I was just anxious and that there was nothing going on. And then around 18 weeks, I actually went into preterm labor and I was admitted into the hospital. I gave birth to Eliana prematurely. She lived for 3 hours and unfortunately passed away.
We always tell each other if we would have known what we know now before, we would have probably left and tried to save our first child.
Shortly after that, I almost lost my life because I developed an infection, and my husband actually advocated for me because I was telling them I wasn't feeling well and they were still trying to send me home.
Losses are common, but when you actually go through it yourself, it hits different. My wife is incredible, and she really is inspiring to me. She's gone through so much as a Black woman, from the mistreatment to everything she's gone through, and it pushes me to have to be there, and it pushes me to be stronger. And I just think that because our love is so strong and because we have that constant communication, it really helps us get through the tough things. We feel like we could go through anything.
We went on to experience secondary infertility, and it took me a while to get pregnant with my now daughter that I have.
With Zena Faye, who is our living child, who's 4 years old, being able to constantly communicate and just be on the same page is what got us through.
Similar situation, feeling the same pains I felt with my first daughter around the same exact time. This time I had what's called a cerclage, which is used to keep the cervix shut. When I went to my anatomy scan, my daughter had kicked through the cerclage and her foot was already in my cervix, and I was 20 weeks. Same speech I got, there's nothing they can do. Well, they were referring to her as it was not viable until 24 weeks. They were telling me I had to potentially induce labor, and I chose to say no, and I stayed home on bed rest. I had to advocate for that as well because they wouldn't write me out of work. So I chose to stay home. I stayed on the couch for a couple of days. We went back. I was even more dilated, and so they admitted me into the hospital. They set up the room for me to give birth. I just had an overwhelming feeling that it wasn't over, and I refused to go through it again. So I looked at my husband and I told him, I was like, we gotta get out of here.
During the birthing process and how I supported her in that role is being her advocate. Because there's even times where the doctor will ask us to make an important decision, and my wife won't be in the headspace to make that decision. Always having to be present was my role in the pregnancy journey, because like I said, when there's times where the doctor needed an instant answer on something, it was overwhelming, it was a lot. Because during the time when the hospital basically denied my child's care, we looked at each other and was like, we gotta get out of here. We know our rights. We discharged ourselves from the hospital and drove somewhere else that would do something about it. And even if they didn't, at least we had that mindset, at least we tried.
Put my feet up on the dashboard. My husband drove me to Brigham and Women's in Boston, which is the next state over. The doctors there as well said similar things, but they were willing to try. At 22 weeks exactly, my daughter was born. She actually was breech and came out like a football. That experience for me was very traumatic. She was actually one of the earliest surviving babies in the world. And at that point, they told us like she might not make it. They gave us a lot of negative prognoses for her, and she's a fighter. We spent 144 days in the NICU. After that, she came home 2 weeks after her due date. She's now a thriving 4-year-old. We named her Xena after the warrior princess. I am just so grateful for her because she's taught me, sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional. She taught me so much. I look at her and I just see strength, and I want her to know how special she is and how worth it she was, and no matter what her outcome would have been, I'm so glad we fought for her. So my story of hope for anyone in my situation is Trust your instincts, fight for what you believe in, and never give up. My village, I would not be here without them, particularly my best friend. She's been with me since day one, even with my first pregnancy. I truly, truly am appreciative of everyone who's been supportive, my family in particular. As soon as Zena was born, I had a lot of people come right to the hospital, being understanding of just the space I was in and whenever I needed an uplift. To them, it might be little things, but for me, it meant a lot. I'm just so appreciative, and I couldn't be here, and Zena wouldn't be here without them. When we were going through everything prior to her delivery, we were told everything under the sun that she wouldn't be born alive. But when she came out breathing, kicking feet first, that's what gave me the hope to keep fighting.
It's hard to do alone, so I think just always being her support and just always advocating for her and making sure she gets the proper care, because I know what's right and my wife knows what's right for her.
I knew I wasn't in the space to advocate for myself, and so something told me to tell my husband. I said, no matter what, when they come in this room, you tell them no.
I wouldn't say I would do anything different. I just think that things happen for a reason. I would like family support more. Sometimes when you go through traumatic things, it's hard for people to be present, not because they don't want to, it's because they don't understand or they don't want to deal with the trauma. I feel like the support needs to be consistent in a sense. When you're actually going through it for months, it helps you get through those months in a sense. So I'm a strong person, and so is my wife. You don't need to have support every time, but sometimes when you're a strong person, people just forget, like, you know, they'll go through it on their own. They always go through it, but you know, you always gotta be mindful of the strong people, because they're the ones that's, you know, even though they're strong, they're still going through it and they're hurting the most too, you know?
Something that's given me hope about BMH equity is the fact that more women are sharing their stories, and there's more organizations doing the work to help Black women in their journey to motherhood and doing the work and the advocacy for our people. That's given me so much hope. The more that we don't have to have these conversations anymore, because we can have the healthcare we deserve. Women will be listened to. I think that's what is giving me hope with Black Maternal Health.
I really appreciate Nurture Her for allowing this opportunity for me to share this story from a male's perspective. I feel like it's not talked about enough. Men go through the traumatic experience too, supporting their partners. So I genuinely appreciate it. And, you know, it means a lot to me because, you know, I feel like males' voices need to be heard, especially when it comes to the pregnancy journey.
It's time for new narratives of hope that heal. It's time for us to be seen. It's time for our stories to be heard. Join us. Shine a light on Black birth stories of hope.